The biggest mistake I see my clients making is they don't start soon enough. What I want to talk about is all the other parts of your business that are hugely important in selecting the correct buyer, the right purchaser, who's going to continue your work, your impact as you go forward.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsal, and I am stoked to have the conversation we're going to have today and excited to share our guest. But before we do, let me just share this with you. So I've been sharing at the end of many podcast episodes about how you can get a really amazing call with our team, a clarifying call that can help you identify where you want to go, what's in your way, how to get past it, and really start gaining some ground and momentum in the business growth journey that you're on. What I haven't done is shared it at the beginning. So I want to give you that opportunity here, because if you don't make it to the end of the episode, you don't know about it. So we open up spots, about 15 of them a month, where we have an absolutely free strategy session with you. And that call is intended for two things. Number one, to provide this, right? And this is the biggest thing holding people back in their business is indecision or not knowing what to do. So many people know from like E-Myth and Michael Gerber and whatever, everyone spews about like, oh, I got to work on my business. But what we don't do is we don't identify what that means. Like, what am I going to be doing when I'm working on my business? And if you don't have a strategy and a plan and you're not thought out about it, then every day when you know you need to work on your business, you're going to think about it and you're not going to know what to do. And you're either going to just be going in a bunch of different directions or no direction at all. So what we do is we first identify what is it that you're trying to create? What does 12 months from now look like? Then we identify what are the things preventing you from getting there. And finally, we help you to see how you can get past that. When you walk away from this 30-minute call, you will have a ton of clarity around what you need to do in your business. The second part of it is if you really love the conversation, but you also need further help along the way, then we can discuss with you what it might look like to work together to help you on that journey. So if you want to book that call, go to profitwithlaw.com/strategy session, profitwithlaw.com/strategy session, and see if we still have one of those spots available this month. Our guest today is Ruth Mannschrek. Ruth Mannschrek, Dr. Ruth Mannschrek, dentist, business strategist, and founder of Shoreline Strategies, LLC. I hope you forgive me for skipping the doctor on that first one. Has over 30 years of ownership in private practice. After a life-altering experience with her daughter's NICU stay, I also have a NICU baby. She reimagined her business, reducing her hours while boosting revenue. This shift inspired her to develop a streamlined business model centered on efficient systems, high-performing teams, and thriving company culture. Now, through her programs, Business Lifestyle by Design and Prep It to Sell, Dr. Ruth helps entrepreneurs build scalable businesses and ensure they sell for maximum value when the time is right. When she's not coaching and mentoring small business owners, Dr. Ruth can be found engrossed in a good book, walking her two dogs, taste testing new wines, or paddleboarding around a lake in northern Michigan. Dr. Ruth, welcome to the Profit with Law podcast.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here this morning.
As am I. So I don't know if you realize this, or if our audience realizes it. I've probably mentioned in the past, we do batch recording. So I have a podcast recording day. I do one day a month, and it is literally back to back. We do 6 or 7 interviews in the day. I barely have time to go to the bathroom. But what it does is it creates not only the content for the month, but it gives us a buffer. So in case somebody cancels or in case we're short a recording in a future month, we have an inventory. And it allows us to be able to stick to the schedule of producing an episode every single week. So podcast recording days are my favorite day of the month. So we're kicking off favorite day of the month here with you. And
Great.
I'm really excited to jump in. So real quick, I just gave the official bio for you, but our listeners want to know really who is Dr. Ruth. Tell us that story. Maybe the story with how your NICU baby stay got you started in a different direction, but give us the broad strokes of how you got to where you are, what it is that you do, and then we'll jump into some meat and potatoes on your expertise.
Sure. So yes, I'm a dentist, started my practice from scratch. We were going gangbusters, practicing 4 days a week. We had 2 little boys. And then my daughter was born. She had a very traumatic birth, spent almost 6 weeks in NICU. When she came home, she had to see 8 doctors every week. So my husband has a full-time career. I had to scrunch my 5 days of practice into 2.5. So I went to my team and said, we're going to do this. We are going to inhale, get very effective, efficient. And we did it. It took us a year to get back up to our regular revenue. And then we started to grow. And we never did go back to the 5 days a week practice. We just totally enjoyed being there in a part-time situation in the office. Then fast forward 30 odd years, I had bought another practice and I went to sell my first practice. And I didn't do anything to prepare for it. I sold it to colleagues. I was very trusting, had no clue what I was doing. And it didn't go well. Didn't go well at all. I was hugely disappointed. After that many years of building my baby, I was horrified at what I walked away with. So I never want another professional in private practice to have that disappointment, that feeling of, whoa, what did I just do? And there are so many things I could have done to do a much better job and in selling my practice. So I'm on a mission to make sure owners think about, how do you want to hand this off? How do you want the next chapter of your life to go? What goals do you have? How do you want to do this? So that no one does what I did again.
And I love the idea of talking about preparing your business to sell. And listeners, before you say, oh, this episode's not for me, fast forward to the next one, rewind to the previous one, hear me out for a second. What I have found is that a law firm owner who is thinking about selling makes much better business decisions in the way they run their operational business day to day, because you're thinking about one thing. So when you sell your business, how is your business valued? It's valued based on you not working, meaning they don't need to replace you, or they add back whatever it would cost to replace you, which can severely decrease what it's worth. And then they look at the profit multiple. They look at the profit the business is generating, and they say, okay, I'm willing to pay 3x, 4x, 5x times this number. So, and what's funny is we do fractional CFO services. So when we can have somebody come into the fractional CFO side of the business, typically those firms are running between 5 and 15% margin. So if you think about this, even if you're at 10 million in revenue, and I know some people are at 500,000 in revenue, you're not thinking about things in that range, but let's even paint a really big picture. Let's say it's 10 million in revenue. 15% of that is 1.5 million, right? So your multiple is going to be, let's say it's 3 times that, right? So you're talking about selling it for 4.5 mil, right? Now, if you were at 35% margin, 3.5 million, you can now sell that with the same multiple, which, by the way, if your margin is that high, you get a better multiple because it's a better run business, right? So, but even if you use the same multiple, you're now selling it for $10 million. That's the difference between one profit margin and the other, right? It's massive. And every business should be running somewhere in that 25 to 40% margin range. We strive for 35% with our fractional CFO clients. And if you unlock that and also focus on you not being needed, those two things are going to make you run your business so much differently. So we're going to dive in with Dr. Ruth on her experiences and what you might need to do. But think about it this way. Even if I'm not thinking about selling my business, understanding all of these concepts and implementing them now so my business is ready to sell is actually going to make my business more profitable, make it more efficient, and give me a better life. The second thing that I heard in your story, which I really resonated with, because it kind of is similar to my story, is where you had a personal family crisis where you put your child first, and because you put your child first, that forced you to make different decisions in your business. And I don't want to focus on my story right now. I don't want to focus on that story specifically. What I want to focus on for our listeners is to pay attention to the fact that Dr. Ruth could have made that decision without that crisis. The crisis is what caused her to do it. But the reality is that when we're choosing to practice law, when we're choosing to be the salesperson, when we're choosing to be the customer service rep, when we're choosing to do those things, it's a choice. And you at any point in time can decide that you want to be a business owner instead and put somebody else in the shoes of whatever that role is. Now, it's easy for me to say, if you're making $200,000 in revenue, you're not going to hire 5 different people to take over your 5 different hats, but start with one. Make the decision, I'm not going to be the lawyer anymore. Hire an attorney. That decision is going to propel your growth. That is what growth comes from. And Dr. Ruth will attest to that. Like, I should have done this sooner, probably, is my guess, right?
So, and that is the biggest problem. The biggest mistake I see my clients making is they don't start soon enough. And you in your podcast do such a fabulous job describing everything you just talked about, the numbers, all the financial. What I want to talk about is all the other parts of your business that are hugely important in selecting the correct buyer, the right purchaser who's going to continue your work, your impact as you go forward.
So let's jump into that conversation. Let's talk about, what does this look like? What does this journey look like? I imagine before you can think about what buyer you want, you have to get really clear about what it is that you created, right?
Sure. The very first thing I encourage people to do is decide what you want. What do you want when you walk away? Do you want to stay on and work in a certain position for a certain amount of time? Do you want to walk out the door? I have helped professionals walk right out the door. They get up from the closing table and leave, if that's what you want to do. Do you want to retire when you're young? Do you want to retire when you just can't function anymore? When do you want to do this? What do you want it to look like? What are your non-negotiables? Those are so important. We need to get out of the mindset of, I'll take whatever buyer I can get, and really put yourself first. You created this baby. Make sure you get the right buyer, not just any buyer. Think of yourself as Goldilocks and the 3 bears. And there's several areas that you can work on. So to be specific, the first one is you want to increase the value of your business. So one of my clients had run a very successful line item, service line in her practice, and she packaged it up and turned it into a business in a box. So then she had intellectual property and had an additional thing that she could sell. It was increasing the value of what she had to offer to the buyer, no matter what kind of buyer it is. So think of, how do you do things? What do you offer? How can you make the value of your business more? And what you just mentioned, all the things of increasing your revenue, increasing your margins, all those are great ways to increase the value. The second piece you're going to want to look at is, how can I decrease the risk that is inherent in my practice? Buyers look for risk. What if you are the rainmaker in your practice? What's going to happen when you're not there? Who's going to take over that? How scary is that going to be for a buyer? If you have a small percentage of your clients that are responsible for a large percentage of your revenue, that's another red flag that they're not going to want to see, because if they lose those clients, the revenue is going to take a hit, and they're going to anticipate that, and that's not going to be enticing to them. It's not going to be attractive. Possibly you have, in your practice, you may have an attorney who generates a considerable percentage of your revenue. If that attorney decides to hit the road when you do, that's going to be seen as a risk. So does that make sense? To just decrease all the areas in your business that appear risky to a potential buyer.
Yeah. So far, if we look at it the other way, right, what are the proactive things that you can do is number one, get yourself out of the weeds. You shouldn't be owning any part of the process because if you are the salesperson, if you are the attorney, if you are any of these, then there is an inherent risk of what happens when you leave. Not only do we have to calculate what it would cost to replace you, but what if the person that replaces you doesn't do the same job you were doing, and therefore we don't get the same result? So you got to get yourself out of the weeds. You have to diversify in two areas. You have to diversify your clients and you have to diversify your product lines, right? So that's what I hear from you as the takeaways. And I think there's one more thing that you didn't say that I want to spell out, because you started off this part of the conversation was saying you want to get what you want, right? Like, don't just settle for any buyer. You want to get what you want. And you didn't say this outright, although your entire thing after that is really leading up to it. So I just want to spell it out. We know what a buyer's market and a seller's market is, say, in real estate, right? Like, and if it's a seller's market, you can be picky about who buys your house and you can charge whatever you want to charge. And if they don't want to pay for it, there's someone standing behind them in line, right? In a buyer's market, there's very few people buying and people are desperate to sell, so they can ask for whatever they want. They can get the house that they're picking, right? When it comes to buying and selling a firm, it's no different. If you want to be able to be in the seller's market, it needs to be that you have something that you can stand by and say, I'm going to wait for the right buyer. If you haven't done these things and you haven't set yourself up for success, you're going to have to settle because the good buyers are not going to want your business.
Very good. I like that. One more thing I would add to the decreasing the risk, especially if you have a smaller practice. If you are the face of your brand, because your practice has a brand, and if that is connected completely to your name as opposed to the business, that's also seen in the dental world. That's a terrible problem we have, and so think about that. How can you assuage the feelings of a risk-averse buyer when your personality, your face, your placement in the community is the brand of your practice? So think about that.
Yeah, that's Ruth. That's Dr. Ruth. Sorry, that is another thing that we don't think about. But this is why, like, even when you're starting your firm, you need to think about selling it, because so many law firms are named after the owner.
I know.
So many of them carry the name of the owner. And I mean, if I have Amsel and Amsel, right? And like somebody comes to buy it, why would they want to own a business named?
Right.
It has nothing to do with anything that makes any sense. But if I am a estate planning firm and, we name it, Legacy Living or something like that, right? Now it makes sense to what we do. So the name, and there's actually an attorney out there who wrote a book on it. His last name is Rizvi. I'll look it up and I'll share it at some point, but we'll put in the resources too. He wrote a book on this and he's a big, I think his law firm's name is the Patent Professor. And he talks a lot about naming your firm and not using your name. And I think that's something that people need to think about. And if you're thinking of selling 10 years from now is the time to transition to a new name that is not tied to you, that somebody else can get behind. So that's definitely something that you want to think about.
Yep. Very good. The next thing I would have people look at is, what is the competitive advantage of your practice? There are no two practices that are the same. So in your community, if there are two practices for sale, why would a buyer pick yours, hands down, pay more for yours compared to someone else's? What is your competitive advantage? A lot of that could be centered around why you do what you do and how you do what you do. But it's something that you need to focus on, figure out what it is for starters, because so many people don't see themselves as having a competitive advantage, but we all do. And how can you make the most of that way ahead of time so that it's not just you that knows what your competitive advantage, but your community, your colleagues know exactly why your practice is better than somebody else doing the exact same thing. The final thing that I would have people take a look at is owning your practice turnkey easy? You've spoken to this many times. Have you stopped practicing? Are you not part of the deliverable? Are you functioning really as a CEO as opposed to an owner / founder still? I know it's hard to let go of that title, that position, that it's just a wonderful thing to have your own practice that you built, your baby, but it's not helpful when it comes to the end of your time running this wonderful practice you created. So I encourage people, figure out if you get hit by a truck as an owner, would your team, would your representatives be able to sell it for you? No problem.
Yes, 100%. And working with hundreds of law firms, if you ask me, like, what is the secret to success? What is the secret to growth? What is this, what makes somebody successful? And the answer is always people. It is the people on your team. It is assembling a team. People like to say assemble a team of A players, right? A players are really hard to come by and hard to find. And I'm okay if you've got a team of B players with A player leaders, right? But more importantly, the faster that you can get everything off of your plate, the faster you're going to grow. Because everything you hold on to is a bottleneck.
Amen.
And
thank you.
When you're getting ready to sell your business, you should be done with that journey. That should be the end of your journey of handing off all of the responsibilities. Even once you've handled off all of the lay person responsibilities, all the boots on the ground things in your firm, you probably are still holding on to the strategy part of it. You're probably still holding on to overseeing the COO or something like that. You're the CEO in your business. At some point, I would challenge you to become truly just an owner, an investor, and hire a CEO. Have somebody else be running the firm. That will set you up for absolute disentanglement, disengagement, and be able to sell the firm and simply walk away without you needing to develop relationships with your clients, with the new owner, all of the things that you might need to do in alternative selling arrangements. Now, I think one more piece of this is, when you've successfully done that, you've also successfully built a significantly larger firm, right? You're not going to disentangle yourself from it if you're solo. You're not going to disentangle yourself from it if you've got one attorney on staff. At that level, you probably can't afford to have a dedicated salesperson. You probably can't afford to have a dedicated marketing person. So you have to start thinking, if I were to take all of my hats that I wear and assign them to somebody else, what level of business will we need to be at to be able to have all of those ancillary players? And that should be, when you start looking at your planning and your goal setting, that should be your first goal. Because we think, oh, whatever size it is, I'm going to sell it at that size. But to unlock the best value, it requires that you be completely eliminated from the picture. And to do that, you have to get to a certain size.
And I think I would leave your listeners with this question to just to think about, because what I was told was that you wait until the Monday after you make a sale to announce it to your team, that this has happened. And because I'm in the cowboy part of my life, I'm turning things around. And I would say, I wouldn't wait until afterwards. I would tell them, why not? What would happen if you told your team 10 years ahead of time, I'm getting ready to sell my practice today, so that when I do leave, you guys can continue what we're doing and not lose a step. Like, make your team so irresistible. Sorry, that was the wrong one. that no one would want to get rid of them, make them feel like they're part of the decision process. We used to have, the next time around selling a practice, we did it completely differently. And we had potential owners come through and interview with my team. And then we had debrief conversations with the team. So what do you think? Is this somebody who understands our practice? Is this someone who deserves to buy this beautiful machine we built? Completely flip that idea of, oh, I should tell the team after the deed is done.
Yeah, I love that. That just goes back to, earlier in the conversation when we talked about being in control of the selling conversation. When you get to be picky, when you've done all of this, you get to be picky, and therefore you get to do it differently and you get to set it up differently. And honestly, I think it's completely out of integrity. Like, you built this team with trust, and then you're going to blindside them with the fact that you sold it. Like, they're going to feel alienated. They're going to feel taken advantage of, even though that's not the case, right? They're not an owner. It's nothing to do with them. But that will affect the buyer, right? Like, the buyer will walk into a situation where the team is not on board. And what that does is it does not set them up for success. Now, that could have ramifications on your sale if the purchase price included a payout that was not to exceed, if you didn't hit certain metrics, which I know is probably what happened with your dental practice and why you had such a bad experience. But this all goes together to kind of create this beautiful scenario of like, hey, if you do this right and you think about it in advance, which is why I think everybody needs to be listening to this interview, right? It's not just people who are thinking about selling today, tomorrow. Like, if 10 years, 15 years down the road, this is an option, then that's something you want to start paying attention to now. And I'll throw something else in. I'm a huge fan of performance-based compensation and bonusing, and I did a whole talk on various types of bonuses and what's out there at the last Law Firm Growth Summit, and how to set them up. I love holiday bonuses. I learned from my Philippine employees. In the Philippines, they have something called the 13th month. And I've now started this practice where I strive to give all of my employees a 13th month. So essentially a month pay, which comes out to about 8.5% of their salary at holiday time. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And if you're running your business well, then you have the money to do that, and it's no problem. But here's the thing. If you're telling your employees 10 years in advance, hey, I'm preparing to sell, you can also tell them what's in it for them. You can take a percentage of the money that you're going to get from selling your business and share it with the people who got you there. So you can tell them, I'm going to share X percent of the selling price with the team members. And that gives somebody motivation to stay on board, to stay on, because they know that at some point there's going to be something in it for them. Not that that's the only reason or anything, but that's an extra added thing that just keeps everybody marching towards that goal of where you're creating. And honestly, like, you say, well, what if I promise it to them and then I don't end up selling, right? Like, it's for 10, 15 years and like, this is a great ride. Why would I even sell this thing? Well, guess what? Then you're doing well enough that you can give them a bonus anyway.
Sure. I just love that it makes your team feel like worthy humans, that their opinion matters, their perspective matters. You've created a very high functioning team, and you respect their opinion, their perspective. I think that's a huge thing you can give to your team.
Yes. Awesome. Dr. Ruth, this was a great conversation, and I'm sure that there's so much more to unpack. I have so many more questions, but you know what it is, right? Like, we're at the tail end of this. What I like to do when I close down the conversation is I like to do two things. Number one, what is one parting piece of advice or wisdom that you want to share with our listeners? Something that maybe we haven't talked about yet, or something you want to reiterate. And then number two is, if they want to find out more about you, they want to get in touch with you, they want to follow your stuff, they want to work with you, what is the next steps that they can do to connect with you?
So, sure. Wonderful. Thank you. The thing I would reiterate is, please start early. Start way sooner than you think you need to, and don't do it yourself. Bring your team in. Your team has a perspective that you, as the owner, as the attorney, do not. And it's so helpful in cleaning up the pieces, getting everything organized. Don't take on this job all by yourself. And the second thing is, I have a free resource for your listeners. If they would go to prepitnow.com, there's a checklist for things to look at as you get your practice ready to sell.
Awesome. And let's get the spelling of that. Is it PREPITNOW?
Yes. Yes.
.com?
Yep.
Awesome. So folks, my team is going to link up that URL in the show notes. So if you're out for a run in the shower, driving your kids to school, whatever you're doing while listening to this podcast, we got you covered. Go to profitwithlaw.com and you could find it in, you'll find the podcast there, and on the podcast page are all the resources, or in your podcast player in the description, there should be links to everything that we've shared here. We're going to circle back real quick. Dr. John Rizvi, or is it Professor John Rizvi, is who I was referring to earlier. And he is a patent attorney and a law firm growth strategist. And I don't know if I've had him on the podcast. I probably should invite him here, but he does a lot of talking around, how important it is to name your firm. So check him out on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever, any of those platforms, you'll find him, or just Google the patent professor if you want to learn more about him. And folks, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but I'll mention here again, we about 15 spots a month is what we provide, absolutely free strategy session. If you want clarity, you want to make sure that you get some momentum going, you get some growth going in your business, and you feel like you're stuck, you're stagnant, you can't figure out the next step, then you want to have a strategy session with us where we're going to help you unpack what does 12 months from now look like, what's getting in the way of you getting there, and then how do you overcome that. Book it at profitwithlaw.com/strategy session, profitwithlaw.com/strategy session. And like I said, seats are limited. We do about 15 of these a month, and we'd love to have you. But if it's booked up, you'll have to wait until the next month. So grab that URL from our resources page, or go put it in your web browser now and book a spot for us to have that conversation. We are here every single Thursday with a brand new episode, and we would love it if you hit the subscribe button, both on YouTube or your podcast player, so that you get notified when we release that out into the world, which is every single Thursday morning. So see you next week. Take care. Bye for now.